Hey y'all, my name's Tyson, and this week let's dive into the details of dimensions. All right, so we all know that SketchUp is a great tool for getting your ideas out, exploring them, but when you need to get that model into the real world, you got to create some plans and probably dimensions. You also probably know that if you're going to do a lot of dimensions, the best tool to do that is layout. It has more powerful dimensioning tools, including an angular dimension tool, which core SketchUp doesn't have. But if you want to add some quick dimensions to your model, here's some tips for making the most of them. Let's have a look. All right, so we're not going to go into the basics of dimensioning. You probably know that you can just dimension from point to point or from an edge. What we're going to look at is some of the settings we can use. So if I select this, for example, up here, you may need to expand the advanced attributes to see some of the other options. And this would be fine if all we wanted to do was affect just this one dimension string. You probably also know that if we go to the model info, we can actually affect all the dimension strings. So if I wanted to update all of them with a different font or size, I could select all dimensions and update them here. Now, if you want to have this be your default, remember to make the changes you want and then save this model as a template. Otherwise, it will revert back to the defaults each time you start a new model. One more thing here, as we look at dimensions, there's an option here for expert dimension settings. Now, these are a couple display settings that we won't mess with right now, but this highlight non-associated dimensions, you can change the color, and we can, actually that's usually off by default, but I'm going to make sure it's on. And what that means is, for example, if I go to this dimension here and I say like width, you can see it's highlighted in red. That is a now non-associated dimension. If I take this table leg and move it over here, the dimensions are moving, but back here we've changed it. Even if we changed that and said that's something like 50 inches, we've typed in, it's going to override whatever the default dimensions are. Now you can easily reset that just by double clicking and deleting anything you've typed. Hit enter, and it'll revert back to the default state, which will actively be tied to your model. But what if we want to do something like this, where we have a call out for it? You can do that by coming in and say short length, for example, and then use these brackets. That will tell SketchUp to keep the dimension. So if I hit enter, now it'll keep the text and the dimension. Now, if you edit this, you need to enter those brackets again every time for it to retain that sort of active dimension stringing. A couple things. You can see how this is always facing us. That's the default setting. You can align them to the dimension string. And you can see how that would work from some views particularly well, but not from every view. So that's an option, certainly. I'm going to align those back to the screen. One final tip. Dimensions can be automatically applied to arcs and 2 circles, but not, if I look at the dimension tool, I don't get an option to dimension anything here. I can dimension from point to point, certainly, but not these circles. You need to dig into the raw geometry. These were nested groups. So now that I can actually see the circles and arcs, that should work for us. So if I click the dimension tool, I can click, say, here, and it's going to pull on the diameter, or I'll pull a measurement here, which gives us that arc. If you're using a circle, it's going to default to a diameter. If you're using an arc, it's going to default to the radius. But we're going to see that we can right click and say type, and we can change those. So if we wanted these all to be radius, so now I have a radius of 4 inches, 8 inches, and 1 foot, or 12 inches. And I'm going to close out of that group. So if you want to attach dimensions to circles and arcs, make sure you're attaching them directly to the geometry itself, not to the outside of the group, which will not work. So hopefully that gives you a few tips about using dimensions. Some of those tips do move over to layout, such as using brackets to keep your dimension strings while adding text. You do have, again, more flexibility in layout, but this does give you some options here within SketchUp directly. If you have other thoughts or ideas, please let us know. We'd love to hear what you want to see in the comments. See us do here, and also if you have any other suggestions for dimensions or how to use them in the best way. We are eager to carry the conversation forward. Again, please subscribe, like if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.